Welcome back, however you watch care members. It is Sister Donna with you for another season, episode of Greenleaf, season 4, episode 1, The Original Sin. So Harmony and Hope are assimilating to Calvary, and this transition is not going smoothly. Grace is acting as interim pastor, and the rest of the Greenleafs are basically disgruntled pew warmers that are just spectators at this point. So Grace is trying to get opportunity for Charity and Jacob. She speaks to Phil Demois about it, Demers, and he says Bob, who's the president of Harmony and Hope, will never go for it. And he cites the current events with Charity being arrested for kidnapping and Jacob being caught up in the Triumph audit thing. So when she goes back to, later on they have family dinner, and she goes to explain this, Carissa and Charity, they are unrelentless in saying that she's self-serving and she's not doing enough for them, and it's all her fault that this has taken place because if it hadn't been for her coming back, Bishop and Lady May would still be married, the church would still be under the Greenleaf name, and they would be retired. Jacob would be head pastor, and Bishop and Lady May are trying to get her to just quiet down, but Carissa feels that she's entitled to have this conversation and that she has suffered a lot. And Lady May's like, what have you suffered that we haven't suffered or are still suffering? But you can't persuade Carissa that she isn't going through a lot. Nevertheless, Grace excuses herself from the table. When she first gets up, it kind of makes Carissa shut up because it looked like Grace was about to beat her down. But Grace just exits the room, and later on Lady May comes to talk to her and says it's not your fault. Understand why Phil said no, and Bob will probably say no. But this time when you talk to Bob, don't ask, tell. And also Grace is upset because she wants the family to know that Lionel's her father, that Aaron is her brother, and who her real identity is. And she feels like that's being hindered by her mother. And her mother's like, we'll get to tell that truth once we get Calvary back. So meantime, Charity speaks to Phil, and she's doing this self-righteous thing, talking about she's better than the rest of her family, that she hasn't been, participating in any scandals this and other. She lost her husband to the gays, and she's just doing all this self-promotion. And Phil sees her as a weak link, and he makes her an offer. And he says, when I become pastor, I'll make you associate pastor, and all you gotta do is keep your eyes and ears open for me in regards to your family. And she's like, you want me to spy on my family? And he says, I didn't use that term. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And she's falling for this okie doke, like even from the initial response. It's like there was no, she's kind of, you want me to do that? But she's really thinking about it because she thinks that she wants to be a pastor. And a lot of people argue in the different chats that, maybe if you give her a chance, this and the other. But we're going to have that conversation a little later. Nevertheless, when Grace approaches Bob, she says, look, you're going to add my siblings or I'm going to walk. And he says yes to Jacob, but no to Charity. when Grace conveys that message, it fits in with Jacob because Jacob had just had this meeting. Doris Saunders had been contacting him, which Carissa thought was actually Tasha Skanks under a pseudonym. But he explained that Doris Saunders was actually a member of Triumph, and she has a son who plays for a professional sports team, the Memphis Red Devils, who is notorious for getting in trouble. So she wants to hire Jacob as a life coach. He agrees to meet with Doris and the general manager for the team, Perry Dyson. Perry Dyson apparently has done his research, and he's very aware of who Jacob is and what he has done and the scandals he's been associated with. But he said, since the owners are no curators of virtue, it would probably be just good for you to have your name on somebody's letterhead. And at that time, Jacob's waiting to hear the news about whether or not he'll be AP at Calvary. So when he finds that out, of course, he's happy. He's all smiles because now he has a chance at a real shot at being this life coach. Wonder how that's going to work. Anyway, Grace has been getting these calls from federal prison, and we're like, what's going on? Because every time she gets the call, she is shook. And she's getting these calls from Noah. And she eventually answers the call from Noah. And Noah's like, what is going on? Why haven't you called me? She's like, I've been busy. And she's like, what's up? He said, I got a call from federal prison from an AJ DeLay who says he's our son. And that's where the episode ends. Alright, 2 side things that I didn't mention because they're little small things, but they're cute. So here are Wakey goes this bout of flatulence because apparently he has an issue with dairy. And Zora's like, I can't take it. I'm a full grown ass woman. And she wants Noah's old cabin. And so Carissa tells her initially, hey, if anybody's going to be in that cabin, it's going to be me. And Jacob's like, you can ask grandma, but she's going to just say no. So sure enough, Zora goes and asks her grandmother. And the grandmother said, did your parents put you up to this? And she said yes. And so she said, you know what? You can have it, but you have to resume Bible study with me 5 o'clock in the morning. And she tries to negotiate the time to like 5:30 because 5 o'clock in the morning is kind of early. I am with a sister on that. That is really early in the morning. I love Lord. I do. But I got to praise him when I can be woke and concentrate and not trying to go back to sleep. So anyhow, Sophia has been making her rounds because she's leaving for school, and Zora does offer for Sophia to stay with her in her cabin, but of course Sophia declines. So those were probably the 2 things that I didn't mention. Okay, so now in the chats on Twitter and what have you, people have been arguing that Charity has been dealt an injustice and she's never given an opportunity to preach. Charity's not called to preach. Okay, in my humble opinion, you can agree or disagree with your comments down below. She's not called to preach. She uses preaching as her plan B. Preaching only becomes a thing for her when everything else in her life is falling apart. And if you're called to do something, like Jeremiah says, it's like fire shoving your bones. It just won't leave you alone. He didn't want to preach, but it consumed him. He had no choice because it was something God called him to. And most people that are called try to be like Jonah and escape to the ends of the earth, not to follow that calling. It's not something that you just want and desire. You really have to do it, and it becomes a part of your everyday life. I just don't believe, like I said, every time she thinks about preaching, it's when something's not going right in her life or she feels empty. For example, first season, Gigi came home, so she wanted to compete. Oh, I want to preach this series. And they shot her down. And as soon as Kevin said, let's get pregnant, she didn't think about preaching no more. Then they went through the thing about the babies, and they went through the thing about getting divorced. And then she went through her Jabari stage, and that didn't work out. And she came back wanting to preach. Bishop told her in season 2, this is not plan B. This is your day-to-day, everyday life, 24/7, 365 days of the year, whether you want to or not. Lifestyle. This isn't for you. This is not what you're called to do. So then she was okay for a minute. She got upset. And she's talking about now that how Satan has taken her God-given talent as a singer and made it a source of bondage. Okay, because she's like, she doesn't want to return to singing. So now she's vowing to make a series out of how the devil works. Right now, Charity's not giving me the spiritual maturity of one that should be before anyone. And it doesn't appear that she is sober of mind. Even when she was talking to Phil, I felt like she was either taking drugs or she was intoxicated in some shape, form, or fashion. So she still seems to be spiraling out of control. I'm just not feeling that. I'm concerned about this whole hope and harmony thing. It's weird that Deacon Sykes was so dead set against open and inclusive, but she winds up partnering with Harmony and Hope, which is open and inclusive. She petitioned Grace first, but did she petition Grace because she really equates Calvary with Greenleaf? Or was it all along the idea from Harmony and Hope, especially since Bob has stated to Grace that he's been watching her since her role in Phoenix, and she was disturbed by that, watching me how. And it's like, oh, your TV show and what have you. But he's also been saying he's had his eyes on Calvary for a while. And Bob is not a spiritual man. He's a businessman. Like, he's referring to the business of things. He doesn't seem to be so concerned about people's spirit. Like, he referenced the fact that, people like to go to any H&H church and know what to expect. So they don't want the sermons to be too long. And they want to make sure that the money's rolling in. And, for him, he's the president of this denomination, fellowship, or whatever you want to call it. But he's concerned more with the bottom line and how to increase it and how to take over these big churches. But there's something seems a bit personal when it comes to Grace. So I wonder with AJ and him knowing how to reach Grace and what have you, if Bob Whitmore isn't behind that. All of a sudden we're hearing about this son that she had out of wedlock, which is probably another reason why she decided to leave 20 years ago, because she didn't want her family to know that she was pregnant when she's this prominent preacher and she wasn't married, even though she was very in love with Noah and they were talking about getting married. It didn't happen because she left due to the what she said was the whole thing with Uncle Mac. But now it's got me wondering, did she leave really because of Uncle Mac, or did she leave because she knew she was pregnant and that wasn't going to be a good look, being that she was the prominent preacher at that time? She had to leave so nobody would know. I don't know. Tell me what you think. Hit me up below. Vote, subscribe. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching the video. Until next episode. Bye.